All right, Serious and Silliness Outcast. I am your host, John Livia, and here is another great video. If you love the Mafia videos, let me know. Comment in that comment section. I cover mafia stuff, outlaw bikers, porno stars, and anybody who doesn't fit well into society will get a great video on Serious and Silliness Outcast. Like, share, subscribe, tell all your friends about this great channel that we're talking about incredible stories of the underworld. But today, we're going to be talking about a very competent but fierce and feared gangster that was part of the Colombo crime family that was part of my old neighborhood. It's amazing. The neighborhood that I lived in when I was a kid was chock full of gangsters in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. It was just everywhere. It was insane. And the older I get, the more I'm like, my God, that guy was from Bensonhurst. That guy was from Benson. Holy crap. But anyway, we will be talking about Wild Bill Cutolo. Hey, Cutolo was like suave, smooth, gentleman, but behind closed doors, man, you did not want to mess with this guy. But he was also able to make a ton of money for the Colombo crime family, and he was also on the Vic Arena faction of the war between Arena and Persico in the early '90s. But let's dive into Wild Bill Cutolo. So he's born Benson, Ashbrook in 1949, New Utrecht High School. That's funny because I have some my cousins went to New Utrecht High School. My brothers went to FDR, which isn't too far, but we were zoned for FDR. But I had cousins that went to New Utrecht. It's so funny that you read these stories now, or you look back and like, wow, like, it's funny when you're from that neighborhood and you're like, oh, he went to New Utrecht or he went to FDR or whatever the case may be. But that being said, he actually wound up marrying his high school sweetheart Peggy, and he got his start in the underworld with Patty Amato's crew. Patty, of course, was with the Colombo crime family. In that crew was also Vic Arena. And then what had happened was Patty Amato and Vic Arena got arrested in 91, obviously went to prison, and Bill Cutolo got up to boss. And while he was boss, his crew became extremely notorious in Brooklyn, two of which were really feared. He had Joe Colombo Jr., he had Vincent Chicky DiMartino, and he had Frank Ianich. Frank Ianich and DiMartino became really competent killers for Cutolo. I mean, if he wanted something done, if he wanted a piece of work done, he relied on those two guys. Bill Cutolo made a ton of money. He owned restaurants. He also was into bookmaking and loan sharking. He was very much into labor unions. I believe it was the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Yes. Extortion, labor racketeering, you name it. He was involved in it. And he made a ton of money and lived a very lavish lifestyle and actually moved to Staten Island in the South Shore in a very posh part of Staten Island, from what I understand. But his reputation in Brooklyn was that of, I even remember when I was a kid, my father had a friend of his, a good friend of his, that did work with him, did business with him, and wow, I remember the stories. It was pretty vicious. Anyway, Wild Bill Cutolo, Colombo crime family boss, and he also got all the way up to underboss at one point. As ruthless of a killer and gangster Will Cutolo was, he actually gave back to charity a lot and was a devout Catholic. He even played Santa every year. He put on a Santa suit and gave kids toys. He donated plenty of money to leukemia charities and plenty of other charities. He would attend mass in his local parish in Staten Island every Sunday, and then he would actually attend adoration every Tuesday morning. All right, so for those of you who don't know what adoration is, if you are a Catholic, that is when you go to church and you pray to the Eucharist of Jesus Christ, right? The Eucharist is what Catholics refer to as the body of Christ, right? It's not literal, obviously. It's figurative, and you would pray to Jesus Christ through to the Eucharist. But you would also pray during that time. You'd also pray for people that were in need or people that had passed. And supposedly he would pray for his mom. So it's I don't know how these guys like cope with it, You know, the only way I could see them justifying being such a devout Catholic is that they're putting themselves before a higher cause, and that higher cause is Cosa Nostra, right? Yeah, you're making money for yourself, but it's basically for a higher community, which is Cosa Nostra. You're putting them first. I think they also justify it by saying, "Hey, we only uh, kill or hurt people that are in the life and are involved with us. If you don't want to get involved with us, you're not going to get hurt," which is not always the truth. Um, I mean, there have been people that were hit in crossfires. There have been people that have gotten hurt from car bombings that were innocent. Um, but all I'm saying is it's probably what they need to do is they probably need to justify it in their head so that they could be a devout Catholic. And when they die, they go to heaven. But on the streets, I mean, from what I understand, he was Satan himself. So in the early 90s, there was a war within the Colombo crime family, and it turned into two factions that were going at each other, the Vicarena faction and the Carmine Persico faction. So let me explain how this all started. Persico goes to prison, and he makes Vicarena the acting captain until his son, Alley Boy, gets out of prison. Little Alley Boy Persico, whatever you want to call him, was in prison. He was going to be coming out in the next few years, and he wanted his son to continue being the boss of the family. But Vicarena had different plans. He decided that he wanted the entire family for himself. And Cutolo was very loyal to Vic. They came up together. They were in the Paniamados crew together. So Cutolo went with him. And if he, if they would have won, Cutolo was going to be a major, major heavyweight, maybe underboss, consigliere in that Colombo family. Anyway, from what I understand, Vic Arena tried to basically contact all the bosses when this was going down. I also believe that he was trying to get Gotti's approval, which I believe he did. I think Gotti was actually in his ear telling him because, you got to remember when Gotti had Castellano killed, the Chin was against him, the Lucchese, Vic Amato was against him. They tried coming together and killing both of those guys, both of those guys, Vic Amato and the Chin, tried to take out Gotti in two failed attempts, I believe. One was a car bombing, another one was a shooting. And Persico was also against this because, Gotti went against the rules, and Gotti figured, okay, well, if Vic can take over, then at least I have one family that aligns to me. And so I believe he was chirping in his ear. And I learned all this by interviewing who is now a good friend, Larry Maz. I had him on several times. I will put the interview on in the show in the bottom in the description area of the show of this video of this show. So you can just click and go watch the interview of Larry Mazza because he gives great detail of what happened during that time because he was on the Greg Scarpa side. So Vic decided he was going to contact all the bosses in the Colombo crime family, who was going to be loyal to him, who wasn't. And it was like this big divide. And Larry discusses how he approached Greg Scarpa. Greg Scarpa told him, "I don't know what I'm going to do." Larry said that if he didn't know what Greg Scarpa Sr. was going to do, but whatever he was going to do, Larry was going to go with him because Larry was very loyal to Greg Scarpa Sr. Okay. So he leaves and he says to Larry, I said, I don't know because if I say I'm staying with Carmine Persico, they might have killed me right there. So he said he doesn't know, he's undecided, and they leave. And he said that was actually botched. He said if it were him, as soon as he said, I don't know, he goes, I would have killed me. But that being said, Vic Arena obviously knew that Scarpa was going to be on the Persico side. He was very loyal to Persico. He was with Persico for many, many years. But anyway, so I believe it was November of 1991. Greg Scarpa, his daughter, and his grandson were leaving their house in Brooklyn, and the two guys, Frankie Ianich and Chicky DiMartino, they tried killing them. They tried killing Greg. Nobody got hit. He was able to, it was a drive-by. He was able to evade all the shots. His grandson didn't get hit, thankfully. His daughter didn't get hit, thankfully. But he lived, he survived, he never got hit. Now, here's the funny part. If you go and watch Greg Scarpa Jr.'s interview, I forgot the name of the guy he interviewed. He did two interviews. He did one with John Elite, and he did an interview with, I can't remember the guy's name. Doesn't matter. He was in prison when that happened. And somebody in prison came to him. They were like, yo, they just tried to kill your father. And his answer to the guy was, my father's going to burn down Brooklyn now. And because he knew how serious of a gangster his father was, right? So, here's actually another funny story. And Larry tells this story in one of my interviews with him, Larry Mazza. Now, Larry Mazza was a devoted soldier to Greg Scarpa Sr. They knew Bill Cutolo was going to be at his girlfriend's house, his gumata, whatever you want to call him, side chick, whatever, on Thanksgiving of 1991. And his girlfriend lived in Borough Park. Borough Park was a very Hasidic Jewish community, has a very strong Hasidic Jewish community. But before that, it was still some Italian. So in the early 90s, there was still some Italian, but mostly it was very, very Hasidic Jewish. And they had planned to dress up in that same outfit that Hasidic Jews wear, with the hat and the curls and the black suit and robe and whatnot, and just be waiting near his girlfriend's house. And when he came out, they were going to kill him. There was another plan. He said they were going to pose as cops, go to his house, and pretend to arrest him. And then once they got in the car, they would have killed him. For some reason, they called both plans off. They didn't get Bill. They knew they had to get Bill Cutolo because he was the muscle. Okay, the only guys that were really, firing again, killing each other, Bill Cutolo and his crew, Frank Ianich and Chicky DiMartino, and then there was Greg Scarpa Sr. with Larry Mazza and Jimmy, I can't remember his name. And these guys were the killers on both sides. On Arena's side had Cutolo and his crew, and Persico had Scarpa and his crew. And both of these guys were notorious killers. Iannici actually wound up killing a Captain Rosario Nastasi. He had a social club on 3rd Street and Fort Hamilton Parkway in December of 1991. So Larry Mazza also tells the story that his uncle, who was involved in organized crime his entire life also, calls him in. And he tells him, look, both of us could be killed for me telling you this. But Nicky Black approached me. Nicky Black was another gangster that was on the Arena side and said, if your nephew doesn't come with us, I'm going to kill him. So he said to Larry, blood is thicker than water. Always remember that. So Larry goes and tells Greg Scarpa Sr., and this is basically what they would do. So Greg Scarpa Sr. says, let's get him. We got to get him before they get us, or before they get you or whatnot. So here's what they would do. There's this term in mafia world called going to the mattresses. And basically what that meant was, if there was a war, well, then you hide out. The soldiers hide out. So what happens is they get mattresses. They make sure they're clean, and they put them in different spots of New York City, Long Island, New Jersey, wherever. You don't know where these guys live. You don't know where these guys, I apologize. You don't know where these guys are camped out, but they're sleeping on mattresses in random spots in New York City or wherever, so that you don't know where they're coming from and you don't know where they live. So you can't go to their houses. They're not going to be there, and they are going to come and gun you down. So all business stops. And Greg Sr. and his crew were on the mattresses. We're going to the mattresses. They were living, I believe there was a couple of guys in Jersey. There were guys in still living in Brooklyn, different parts of Brooklyn, so on and so forth, Staten Island. And what they would do is they would actually get this old car, looked like an old cop car, and they would get coffee cups, put them in the front. They would have sunglasses on, baseball caps, and they would look like law. They would look like police officers. And they also had like radio transmitters, so you could hear like phone call conversations and things like that. Apparently he had a lot of equipment, Greg Scarpa, like this. Probably because turned out that Greg Scarpa was an FBI informant for many, many, many years. But anyway, so they're basically every day for 12 hours a day hunting these guys down. So the war basically comes to an end when two guys are killed. Joey Scopo was killed. And in my interview with Larry Mazza, they talk about how they killed Nicky Black. And he tells it in great detail. So Greg Scarpa was in the front seat. Larry Mazza was in the back seat. Greg Scarpa had a rifle, and I believe another gentleman, I believe it's Jimmy something, or I can't remember his name, was driving. Larry had a shotgun. Greg had a rifle in the front. Again, they had the hats on, the siren, glasses. They look like they had like an old cop car. Those cop cars that are not. They don't. It's a cop, but it's not. Like doesn't say NYPD on it. Well, they pull up behind Nicky Black. Now you got to remember too. Scarpa was getting old. He was also diagnosed with AIDS. It's a whole other story. And they see Nicky Black, and they pull up behind him, and he must have thought that he was getting pulled over, because why would you pull over in a war if somebody's behind you? You wouldn't. He must have thought it was the cops, and he just pulled over. When they pull one, now you gotta remember this all happens in seconds. Greg Scarpa hits what he thinks is the safety, and he actually hits the release clip, and the clip and the bullets fall out. Larry Mazza says, "Move up, move up, move up." The driver moves up. Larry Mazza sticks his whole body out of the window, puts the shotgun to the head of Nicky Black while Nicky Black is pulled over, and blows him away, just blasts him, and they take off. When those two murders happen, basically the war was over. And the Persico faction had won. But the feds and the local police were on both sides on their ass like nobody's businesses. And they were trying to take all these people down. So in 93, Bill Cutolo gets actually indicted for racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder. Now, here's a little bit of a funny story that actually happened while he was in jail. So he goes to MDC in Brooklyn. And for some reason, they kept all the Colombo soldiers, captains, capo regimes, killers, associates in the same wing in MDC in Brooklyn for some reason. When the warden was asked why, he said so he could keep an eye on them. But what happened was they actually took over the whole wing. So, and they actually were shaking down other prisoners. They had bribed guards so they could bring in food and stuff and whatever they need. They actually hung a sign in the wing, Italians only. They took over the TV room. Nobody could watch anything they wanted unless it was one of them. I don't know why. I mean, they seized control of the food. Like they didn't want to eat the food, so they brought their own food in. It was unbelievable. And this is all in the early 90s. But the funny part is that the majority of information that was given about Bill Cutolo was, from what we understand, from Greg Scarpa Sr., because he was an FBI informant for so long. But in 94, Cutolo was actually acquitted and released. So Ali Boy Persico was released from prison. He is obviously becomes the new head of the Colombo crime family. And I guess for some reason, maybe to keep an eye on him, Ali Boy makes Bill Cutolo the underboss of the Colombo crime family. I guess as a gesture of good faith or whatnot. I mean, he was a competent gangster. He was smart. He was a moneymaker. He probably could pull a lot of knowledge from him. But in 1999, Bill Cutolo disappears. Now, because he is a high profile mobster, the feds would tail him every day. And he would have the same routine, whether it be church, whether it be the social club, businesses, whatever the case may be. But on May 26, 1999, when we find out later on, which is when he disappears, he is going to a meeting that Ali Boy asked him to go to at the home of Dino Saracino. And waiting outside of the Bensonhurst home is a guy named Dino Colombo. So they're walking in to the meeting. Bill says to Dino Colombo, "Where am I going?" Dino opens the door, shows him where to go, and Dino puts a gun to the back of his head and shoots him and kills him there. We find out later on that he was buried in Long Island, but for a long time, like about 9 years, nobody knew what had happened to him. It was only when Dino Colombo turned state's evidence, took the stand, along with Peggy Cutolo, who was his Wild Bill's wife, and Colombo actually admits to killing Wild Bill, tells the feds where the body is buried, and it's not until 2008 that they actually find the body, dig up where Colombo says it is, and they find the body. So during this time, and this is right after the killing, there's another guy, Jackie DeRoss, kept going to Peggy Cutolo's house, and he wanted books. These guys have a lot of money on the street, and they have to keep it straight, so they would write it down. A lot of the guys would write it down. And so they refer to as the books, and they wanted to know who owed who, because now that goes to Jackie DeRoss, because he is elevated, apparently. And he would come, and he would apparently, according to Peggy Cutolo's, when she spoke with the feds, she said that he would come there, and then he would destroy the place, looking in his office, looking in the bedroom, looking for the books everywhere. She would finally say a little while later that if something ever happens to Bill, burn those books. And he did. She actually burned and got rid of all those books. She goes, "If they kill me, they get nothing." And that's what she actually did. Apparently, he was also looking for money in the house, and from some time to time, she would give him money so he would go away. But after some time, they realized they couldn't find it, and it was done. So, sometime later, Jackie DeRoss and Ali Boy Persico get arrested for the murder of Bill Cutolo, and they are sentenced to life in prison. That is the sad ending of anybody who takes this life. Now, today, the mafia is a shell of what it once was, and this was a time where things were kind of going a little haywire, a little crazy, and they weren't just fighting a war. The Colombos weren't just fighting a war against Vic Arena. They were fighting a war against Vic Arena and the feds, because the feds were coming out hot on both sides, man. So even when they won and Ali Boy was appointed, it wasn't going to last much longer, And ever since then, in the early 2000s, it has been nothing but downhill, especially for the Colombo crime family. I mean, from what I understand, is the Genovese crime family, the Lucchese crime family, who was always more organized, always more street savvy, always more business savvy. For some reason, their guys were always more loyal to them. They still have somewhat of a stronghold, but the mafia is not even close to what it used to be. But that is the story of Wild Bill Cutolo. Now, like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next episode. Later, guys. Peace.